TikTok is racing against the clock. The social media company is set to be blocked in the U.S. starting January 19th. That is, unless its lawyers can convince the Supreme Court in arguments being heard today that phasing out the popular app is a violation of free speech. This comes months after Congress passed a very bipartisan bill that was signed by President Biden, arguing that TikTok is a threat to our national security. If upheld, the law would essentially get rid of TikTok in the U.S. unless its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, sells it to a non-Chinese buyer. Lawyers for the U.S. government are expected to argue that ByteDance could use the social media platform to spy on Americans and access their personal data. The lines are blurred in China between companies and the Chinese government, which could compel entities like TikTok to turn over data under Chinese national security laws. TikTok's leadership has shot down those concerns, so has the Chinese Foreign Ministry. But by the way, TikTok doesn't even exist in China. Instead, ByteDance offers a Chinese version called Douyin, which the Chinese government has used to spread propaganda. It also removes content the government doesn't like, according to the New York Times. So what does it mean for us here in the U.S.? Well, roughly half of us, half of you, Americans use TikTok. And recent polling suggests more Americans support banning it than not, though a third aren't sure. President-elect Donald Trump, who once tried to ban TikTok himself, is now voicing his support for the platform. And there's another way it could be saved. A non-Chinese company could buy it. Which brings us to the latest twist. A privately funded group, including celebrity investor Kevin O'Leary, that's right, Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful, announced yesterday that they have submitted a proposal to buy TikTok's assets from ByteDance.
So there are a lot of moving parts here, and joining us to break them down is former Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher. He chaired the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, and he sponsored the legislation now facing the Supreme Court review. Congressman, it's good to see you. So let me ask you, I have a friend who is a former Obama administration official, and I sent her a TikTok link, and she said, I'm not clicking on that because I've sat in on too many national security briefings. But the question for you, of course, is there any evidence that ByteDance has already spied on Americans or have turned their data over to the Chinese government?
Well, certainly there's massive amounts of evidence that the Chinese Communist Party has done everything possible to spy on Americans. And TikTok is just one element of that broader campaign. Think, for example, of all the revelations surrounding Salt Typhoon and the compromise of our telecommunications infrastructure. So there is no doubt that the CCP wants to spy on us. And Xi Jinping has talked openly about short-form video, about information dominance on the smokeless battlefield of ideological warfare against the West. As for TikTok-specific evidence, every single cabinet official came before my committee in the last Congress and testified as to the national security threat posed by TikTok, which is twofold. There's the espionage threat, but there's also the propaganda threat. When your foremost geopolitical adversary controls what is increasingly becoming the dominant news platform in America, the risks of their ability to manipulate and change content, and we also have new peer-reviewed research suggesting they are doing just that, is too great, which is why we are insisting on a divestment, not a ban, simply change the ownership, and TikTok can continue for the 170 million Americans who use it today.
Representative, TikTok has already made many changes considering the U.S. concerns, including routing their U.S. data through Austin-based tech company Oracle. They did that in 2022. Were their changes not enough? Because they say that it prevents the Chinese government from accessing that American data.
Both the administration, national security officials reviewed so-called Project Texas and found it wanting. The D.C. Circuit Court ruled unanimously in upholding our law, and in so doing said Project Texas was insufficient. Really, the deficiency of Project Texas is it doesn't address the underlying source code, the algorithm, which is still shrouded in secrecy. There's a complete lack of transparency, which is why, in an overwhelmingly bipartisan fashion, Congress decided that the best path forward, which balances national security against the need for the app to continue in America, is a divestment, a change of ownership that would make sure that the Chinese Communist Party, which has cells embedded into ByteDance's corporate governance structure, which in the past has forced ByteDance to apologize for failing to follow appropriate political control, ensure that ByteDance and by extension the CCP does not control the algorithm and the app itself. We think that is the most sensible path forward.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. You know, there are American companies now and investors waiting in the wings to see if they can buy TikTok. TikTok says it is not for sale. Representative, thank you so much. You and I went to college together, and I think we were in a seminar together. We had the same major, international affairs. I doubt you remember me, but I remember you, so I appreciate your time.
I was a terrible student, so you were probably doing any number of scholarly things while I was wasting my education. So I've had to redeem myself by joining the Marine Corps afterwards.
No comment.
Adriana is very scholarly.
No.
Congressman, I will say that.
I recall it. Thank you so much, Congressman. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.